What is going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Speak Up Sports Podcast with Cass, Chris, and Sean. What's going on, fellas?
It's good, y'all. It's good.
A lot going on for sure.
But it is definitely a lot going on. We are back again after a week off. I had to apologize to y'all about that. That is on me. But with that being said, there has been a lot going on. Obviously, we're in the midst of the NFL playoffs and have finally found out who we will see in the Super Bowl here in a couple weeks. We've also, since we're in the heart of the playoffs, that means that there's a lot of coach signings going on. There has been a lot of openings in the NFL, so we will get into that as well. But obviously, we got to start with what we just recently saw. As mentioned, the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots will be having another rematch from a few years back in the Super Bowl, one of the best Super Bowls we've had in recent history. But obviously, we got to start with the championship games. What were you guys' takeaway from the past 2 weeks, especially the conference championships?
Biggest takeaway right now, man. Shout out to Sam Darnold. What a way to turn around the narrative. For a lot of people, the narrative, obviously, you win 14 games last year, but then you have a bad last game of the season, then you get bounced off like you did last year in the playoffs. And just to come back and, look at phase, played a good game in both of the games. I know the first game, obviously, they played the 49ers who were, essentially beat up at that point. So it was a blowout. But to go against a Rams team with that kind of firepower on offense to be able to withstand them and hold them off and get the dub, that was a great showing by Sam Darnold for me. And then obviously the other game, unfortunately, we didn't get to talk about it, but obviously Bo Nix, season-ending injury right before, I guess the last play of the Bills game. I mean, that was a tough game to see for the Broncos, for that defense to be able to, basically keep them in the game the entire time. And just after the first 2 or 3 drives, there was no sustain on that offense for the Broncos. So it was tough to see for them to have a backup quarterback. I mean, you kind of wish, a little different game plan for Sean Payton, take the points knowing that, it's probably going to be hard to come by, especially once that second half hit with all that snow. It was downhill from there. So it was unfortunate for Denver, but like I said, my biggest takeaway, shout out to Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I was definitely going to talk about like the Sean Payton aspect.
I figure I might dive too deep. I know you.
Yeah, not going up 10 when you had a chance, putting the ball, and not just not going up 10. Okay, if you call a play, cool. But you put the ball in the hands of your backup quarterback in that spot and do a little little roll action. I don't know the thought process. I can't see clearly the thought process for that. Like you said, Chris, the second half, it was just, you couldn't do anything. Both sides did nothing, to the point where the Patriots were good just playing defense. Like they didn't try too hard on offense. That was one of those moments where Sean Payton kind of, like, his tendencies really showed up. And you saw moments like this throughout the season, especially like his aggressive nature on fourth downs and stuff. And this is a moment where in the worst moment, where it came back to bite him. And then, I mean, we saw, like, he fired his coordinator, his offensive coordinator. We'll see what they do with Webb, and we'll get to that when we talk about the coaches and stuff. But Sean Payton got to look himself in the mirror for that loss. Like, you can't put that loss, like, I understand Stidham did that dumb shit, but it was very controversial what he did too, because they counted it as a fumble, but he was trying to flip it out. It went back, like, same line but a little backwards or whatever.
It wasn't actually a fumble.
I don't think it was. First, I really don't think it was. I was surprised. If you want
to be honest, I don't think it was intentional ground either. The running back was right there. He just couldn't get it all the way to him. But
I don't know. I saw it.
It wasn't reviewed long enough.
Yeah. I was like, they counted that? Because I turned, like, I turned back and then boom, had the ball. The New England Patriots had the ball, so I was like, okay, that counted as a fumble, cool. Yeah, Tom Payton got to look himself in the mirror for that loss, because that was a winnable game, and that's tough because, like, after everything that you've been through, like you said, the Bo Nix injury as well, you still had a chance to make it to the Super Bowl. And your decisions, I feel, honestly, in that spot, I know it's early in the game, but still, we see how the game went. That was a huge spot for him. As far as the other game with the Rams, I mean, I did pick the Rams to win that game, but I am like you said, I am happy that Sam Darnold played the way he did. I mean, they went shot for shot, him and Matt, and that's exactly what you want to see. And that's we're his contract situation get brought up for extensions, in the off season, all that. Sam did exactly like I don't want to say no matter what happens in the Super Bowl, but kind of no matter what happens in the Super Bowl, he's straight now. He's arrived in a way, and that's good to see from Sam. We've seen his journey these past 7 years. You know what I mean? So definitely good look for the Seahawks, and also that game was like that defense, that special teams, man. They can't they're just awesome. Just overall, I understand the Rams are a tough matchup to stop, especially the third time this season, and you keep playing the team over and over again. It is tough to keep beating them, but I mean, shout out to the Seahawks. Shout out to the Patriots. Even though Drake May didn't play too good, he's in the Super Bowl his second year, so you got to give him credit.
Yeah, and one thing that wasn't mentioned is you did mention the Rams and the Seahawks played 3 times, but for it to be billed kind of the game of the year and it delivered 3 times.
Yeah.
That's also something that really doesn't happen. And we any one of the 3 games you could say has been, could possibly, well, maybe not the first game, but even though the first game was great, there was a lot of turnovers in that one. The second game, absolutely on Thursday Night Football, and then obviously the championship game delivered, to a T. That's not something that you typically see when there's so much build up to a game. But it's kind of funny, since we're sticking on since we've all, you guys both showed love to Sam Darnold. I also have to say it's funny because not fast forward, but throwback to the off season. There was some talk about Sam Darnold possibly being the Colts quarterback, and I was 100% against it, which is funny because a few years ago when he left the Jets, I was 100% in on trying to go get Sam Darnold before he went to Carolina. So it's funny to see just my own personal flip flop on it, and it's really great to see. I know there's a lot of talk about the JJ stuff with the Vikings and should the Vikings, Jets, or Carolina feel bad?
Yeah.
I don't. I think it's hard because number one, Sam and JJ were in the same quarterback room, and they did the training camp together, and they weren't expected to start Sam Darnold, and I understand that he obviously went and did what he did with the Vikings, but I also don't think that they just. I feel like that's it's talked about a lot as if they just moved off on him. I do think that if I remember correctly, I do feel like they offered him a contract and he decided to go to Seattle. So I could be wrong on that, but I do think they get a little bit more flack than they should, and we'll obviously have to see what JJ McCarthy does. But also one of the things that were talked about earlier in the season, Rashid Shaheed. Initially, the returns, a lot of people thought it was a bad trade. And, over the past few weeks, starting with the his big return in the first or the second Rams Seahawks game, it's kind of gone back full circle to where it was a really good trade for them. And we'll see if he ends up, leaving in the offseason or whatnot. But, phenomenal game from both Sam Darnold and obviously Matthew Stafford, kind of putting an end to his MVP season and kind of going out in somewhat of a high note. Obviously they lost, but he played really well. Now going to the other championship game, I am actually going opposite of you guys. I thought it was smart for Sean Payton to do that, and I thought that Sean Payton had the foresight to know 14-0 is going to win this game for us. 10-0 is going to lose this game for us because we all talk about 10-0 going up 10-0, but we also don't talk about that there was 4 missed field goals. Where were they going to get the points to win the game? Because the Patriots did score 10. And there was a conversation that I had with one of my friends in our group meet during the game, and I was immediately like, I think they should. I think it was smart for them to go for it. I just thought the play was a dumbass play.
Yeah, I didn't like the play for sure.
And then also after that, they did say that they got the look that they wanted. Mike Vrabel made a very smart call to kind of combat it, which ultimately kind of ruined the play. But number one, being that it was in Denver, you have to maybe we don't want to give him credit, but maybe they probably knew that the snow was coming in the second half. So that's
No, for
also a
sure, for
factor
sure.
that's probably not talked about enough. But one of the things my friend that I was talking with was before the game, he said, "Look, I think the Patriots are going to win, but the reason I think the Patriots are going to win is because I think that it'll be a close game, but Jarrett Stidham will make a back breaking play that'll end up getting the Patriots to win, maybe an interception, fumble, something like that." In my opinion, if that was your thought, you should want to go up 14-0 because the back-breaking play did happen, which ended up allowing the Patriots to score and go 7 points. Now you have that cushion and you allow your defense and your run game to kind of take it over for the rest of the game. So I do think, you mentioned that Sean did fire his offensive coordinator. I think a lot of that had to do, I don't think that had to do with the game. I think it had more to do with the love that Davis Webb was starting to get and him wanting to keep him around. But, ultimately, hindsight is 2020, so we'll have to see how things play out, for the Broncos in the future. But you do have to wonder if that was their best chance, given that Kansas City wasn't in it, obviously being in the division, being that, once again, in the division, the Chargers were already out. You did beat the team that everybody thought was probably going to go to the Super Bowl in the Buffalo Bills, and we can get into that in the previous week as well. But ultimately, my biggest overall takeaway is something that I've kind of been saying for the past couple years is we talk so much about the quarterbacks, and it always ultimately comes down to team. And that has always been what it's been when if you go back historically, Tom Brady and the Patriots, they had some games where Tom Brady was excellent. We talked about the Patriots. I talked about it at the top with the Patriots and the Seahawks. That was a game that Tom Brady threw for like 500 yards in a game that they probably should have lost if they just run the ball, if the Seahawks just run the ball. There's also the game that, continuing on with the Tom Brady, comparison here, he was really good against the Eagles. But the Eagles team ended up coming through because their offense obviously was really good. And then, Brandon Graham makes the play to seal it for him. So it's always been about team. The Patriots dynasty was based on some good games from Tom Brady. It was based on some good games from the running backs, LeGarrette Blount getting them to the
And
Super
some
Bowl,
good defensive
Jonas
game,
Gray,
goddamn.
and a lot of
Yeah.
good defensive games. Didn't they? They won against the Rams like 13-10. Both great games against the Rams. The one with Sean McVay, the one to get the greatest show on turf, the first Super Bowl they won. So all the talk has been about the quarterbacks, and I think that's why we saw, and we'll get into that a little bit, we saw Buffalo fire their head coach because, look, like I've been saying for the past couple years, the defense has to make a play. And I understand that we all everybody wants to crush Josh Allen for having 4 turnovers and, he fumbled a separate time that ended up getting recovered. They were still up 20. They were up 4 points with like 2 minutes left and had Bo Nix in like a 3rd and 16 and allowed them to convert. That's
bad. That's bad.
We try to focus so hard on the quarterbacks, but it wasn't Josh Allen. Josh Allen arguably had the best quarterback performance that we saw outside of the Seahawks Rams game in the playoffs, like with the 4 turnovers. So like that. The last year, I was a big person that talked about Jalen Hurts was I didn't think he was good those first 2 games. But the team was able to carry him, and then those last 2 games, the championship game, and then obviously the Super Bowl, he was excellent. He pulled his weight. Saquon wasn't able to get off in the Super Bowl like people expected him to. So like it's just all about the team, and I'm hoping that a lot of these coaching openings and firing of offensive coordinators and stuff like that will lend a little bit more credence to them teams trying to build better teams. But there have not been a lot of GM openings, which to me it has me a little curious because you got, for Buffalo specifically, I was one that had been talking about so much with Sean McDermott. And, to that, I maybe didn't mention Brandon Beane enough, but there's a lot of pieces that were missing from that team as well. And, maybe that's some of Sean's doing. Maybe that's some of Brandon's. But there should have been a package deal, in my opinion. And
100%.
and that's just using Buffalo as an example, but there are a lot of other teams that I think that didn't have enough talent and probably should have let go of their GMs as well. But, calling for people firing, is a little tough, but it is what it is. It is what it is. But ultimately, that was kind of my larger takeaway from the whole thing, because now we've got a quarterback that's a second year player. That, I mean, he's in the MVP race, so I'm sure people will try to put him in the top 10, top 5, whatever the case may be. But Sam Darnold is a guy that nobody wanted to give respect. And look at him. At the beginning of the season, I can't recall. I have to go back and look. I can't recall if I ended up having the Seahawks in the playoffs or not. But
You did.
if you guys remember,
I feel like you had them winning the division, honestly.
I had them in. Yeah.
I don't remember.
Y'all had it winning the division, but
I know you definitely had them in the playoffs.
One of the things I kept saying was that team is fucking stacked. Like the talent-wise, the team might have been the most talented team in the league. And I think that ended up coming to fruition. So I think that should be the biggest takeaways. I know everybody wants to talk about the quarterbacks, but ultimately the team, TEAM, is what has gotten these teams, even the Final Four.
Now you sound like John Harbaugh.
Yeah,
the team, and the team.
and John Harbaugh. But getting back to the previous week before the conference championship games, obviously we got to talk about some of the performances. A lot of talk about the Bears and Caleb Williams' throw at the end. A lot of talk about CJ Stroud, and I felt so bad in our last after we taped our last podcast. I came out pretty strong and was like, CJ Stroud kind of plays like a bottom 5 quarterback. And immediately after that, I was like, damn, I kind of went like over exaggerating and like over hard on it when it wasn't that true.
Nah.
Just for him to come out.
I don't know money.
Just for him to come out and be absolutely terrible. But how do you guys feel about the performances between, obviously CJ Stroud, the Broncos, Buffalo? We don't have to talk about the Seahawks at all in the 49ers game because that was just a bloodbath. But the Bears and the Rams and whatnot.
I mean, again, one of them things where it's like, shout out to Bears. They've been winning games this way. I mean, they lost this one, but I mean, I think this was a successful year for Caleb. With the new coaching regime and being able to make strides. They still need to work on a little bit of things because, like I said, a lot of games have been nip and tuck to down to the last minute. But I mean, the arm talent is clearly there. I mean, the man be making miraculous throws. I don't know. Defenses just get something in their head and they just stop playing. I don't know what they be doing. But like you said, the biggest thing is I think that whole weekend is the CJ Stroud thing. I mean, that was just a tough way. And I understand he was missing weapons and whatnot, but he really did look like he didn't know what he was doing. He really did look confused, like he never played the position before. And this is coming from a quarterback that, when he first came to the league, he supposedly took the league by storm, and he's supposed to be a top 10 quarterback. And the performance he's been putting on has been, yeah. I mean, and then you can't. I mean, it's like, but then like you said, try to go back to we got to start judging these different areas by team, not by quarterback, because that defense is hellacious. That defense is good. The defense could carry a team as far as it could go, but when you don't have the pieces around you, the quarterback can fall off to the wayside a little bit. So I think he'll bounce back, but they need to do a lot of retooling that offense. I will say that.
Yeah, I don't think CJ is just done, but I mean that's a tough way to lose. And the fact that you kind of honestly, if he didn't throw the pick 6, I feel like they could have won that. They probably would have won that game. I feel like that one play kind of just messed it up because the defense was holding. I mean, it's times when he turned the ball over at the 40. They're at their own 40 or the other 40. Yeah, at their 40-yard line, and their defense walked them back to midfield to force them to punt the ball. And I'm like, they're doing everything they can to give you this chance, and I don't know. He just completely lost out there. It was a tough look with Caleb. I do think there's a lot to work on there, man, with Caleb Williams going forward. You can't be bottom of the league in completion percentage. That has to be number one to correct going forward. I mean, he's bottom in completion percentage. He's bottom in adjusted completion percentage. If you take away drops and throwaways and all that stuff, like that's not good. Straight up, it's not good. And I understand like the picks they had in this game. And some controversy around whose fault it was. Was the DJ cutting the route short on that one? Was it,
It was Caleb's.
But so overall decision making has to be better. You do see the flashes, like you said, Chris, of just making something happen, and that's something that you need, especially in the playoffs. You need somebody that can just make something happen. Make something happen on the fourth down, 4th and 8. Make something happen on a 3rd and 15 to get a first down. Just miraculous stuff. That's important, but at the same time, you got to have the fundamentals, the basics down if you're Caleb, and that's honestly what ended up losing them this game, losing the opportunity to play in the NFC Championship games. Successful season for Ben Johnson, but definitely a lot to work on going forward there. But yeah, like CJ, it's gonna be some tough conversations too, contract wise. We already saw, and I think they're gonna pick up his option or whatever. But we already saw Bryce's option get picked up. So we'll see what happens, with the other 2 quarterbacks that were around him going forward. But definitely some hard decisions, some hard kind of choices you have to make. But honestly, DeMeco Ryans, shout out to him too. Just overall to go on that win streak that he had, 9-10 games, in the one that went into the playoffs, and to make it where you were. And you could clearly point, I know he don't want to place the blame or whatever. He said CJ's our guy, but he lost that game. He lost that game. It was because of him. so you definitely got to get that fixed. But shout out to Miko Ryans too for a good season, good comeback, because it was looking ugly in the beginning for sure.
If only they had Joe Mixon.
And he's sitting there. You know what?
And on top of that, it's a good sign for DeMeco Ryans, especially in this world where everybody's just clamoring for offensive coaches. And obviously the offense still has to be fixed, but CJ definitely does have to do some soul searching this offseason. Obviously there's been the rumors and reports back to, with Bobby Slowick, and I was a person when Bobby Slowick's name was the most popular name in the world for a head coach. I was kind of like, let's pump the brakes here, because there was a lot of meat left on the bone in that offense. And, for, like I said, for CJ Stroud to have been talked about as having the greatest rookie season ever, there was, like I said, it was kind of only like a 7-game stretch, like a 5, 6, 7-game stretch. So there's a lot of soul searching, and obviously he did. I'm not going to sit here and get into too much of it, but obviously everybody's talked about the world tours that he went on and stuff like that.
Sumo wrestling,
the sumo wrestling and doing all this stuff. Micah Parsons is not, absolved from that either, because obviously Micah Parsons is producing and he's been an All-Pro, but we haven't necessarily seen that All-Pro Micah Parsons in the playoffs either. So, some of these guys, they coming in. I do think there is I do think that some of the older guys that kind of get on the players for doing their podcasts or whatever. We even talk about it, how I don't necessarily like the podcasting either. Sometimes I do feel like that goes a little bit overboard, but I do also see where they're saying like you got to kind of earn your keep, and we historically we saw that with Baker early on in his career, where people were talking about he has all you see Baker on every commercial, but after his his first 2 seasons. And then he went through, his kind of trials and tribulations as well. So I do think that's a cautionary tale for a lot of these players coming in, especially as we start to get into draft talk here in a few weeks and stuff like that. Humble yourself in a sense. Not trying to say like you guys can't pop your shit sometimes, but like earn your keep first before because. Now, CJ Stroud is going to be people are already talking about him like he's a bum. Like he shouldn't get a contract extension like Cass mentioned. He shouldn't, I've already, on some of these national shows, they've already started talking about, should the Rams looking to trade for CJ Stroud and these other teams looking to trade for CJ Stroud. And that's a stark difference from what it was his rookie season. So, a lot of soul searching, and obviously both him and going to the famous picture with him and Caleb. I do think that it was I think you have to count it as a successful season for Caleb. Obviously, getting into the divisional round in the tough division that they were in. But as Cass mentioned, there's people that are looking to put him in top 10 conversations. He's not top 20. It's on, and that's the truth of it. And I understand that we talked about this a couple weeks back, but we have switched away from thinking consistency is good. Jared Goff is somebody that we don't talk about enough in terms of how good he was. Obviously, I chose him to be my MVP, and that didn't happen at all. But that's somebody that's consistently giving you, 25 plus touchdowns, 8 to 10 interceptions, consistently having his team being successful aside from a couple seasons here and there. So, we're so caught up in the special, which he did have the throw at the end of the Rams game. Everybody's talking about it. Some people have been saying it's the best throw in playoff history. No,
that was
not,
the biggest cap.
That was the worst DB play.
That's why I say I don't know what they be doing on defense. They just stop.
Now the throw he had against the Packers, that was something that was legit. And obviously, it's a lot of difficulty to throw the ball with the same velocity that he had. And I'm not taking that away from him, but we also got to kind of be honest. We got to be honest about what it is. And I know everybody wants to, because people are trying to confirm their priors about Caleb coming into the league, but it is okay to just say he's not there yet. There's something maybe to be there, but it's okay to say he's not there yet. And the consistency, and he's acknowledged it. He acknowledged it at the end of the season. He has to work on his footwork. He has to work on his consistency to get that percentage up. And we'll see what that looks like next season. But once again, they have to wonder if this was their best shot, given the variance with the turnovers, the late game magic, how things will look for them next year, and hopefully
course corrects all the time.
Don't fall into the Washington Commanders stuff and start sniffing yourself. And we'll get into the GMs and stuff like that and head coaches here in a second, but their front office has not been great. In there with Ryan Poles and that tenure, so they've got to also make sure that they're not sniffing themselves and think that they have arrived when they haven't, because they don't have a whole extensive amount of talent on the team, even though they were really good. So just saying, putting that out there, because we will kind of, there's going to be a lot of people talking about the Bears next year. It's going to be Super Bowl contenders and stuff like that. Let's just pump the brakes here a little bit, but get into the Broncos and Bills game. Obviously, we have to touch on it a little bit. Shout out Bo Nix, because he obviously didn't get an opportunity to play in the conference championship, but for all the conversation, once again, people are talking about Caleb Williams. I think Bo Nix has proven himself to have been a better quarterback over their first two seasons, and I feel like he has not gotten that respect. And I'm not saying that I love Bo Nix or I think Bo Nix is a top 10 quarterback or anything like that, but I do think that, given the stakes of the game, given how the game went, I do think that he put together a decent performance. I know some people were trying to peddle it as excellent. I wouldn't say it was excellent, just given how the game actually went, and the stats look excellent. But I think that Bo Nix has kind of proven himself that they were right to draft him in the first round, and I do think that I don't know if he gets much better as I've talked about multiple times, having that older quarterback, but consistency, he has at least consistently been good at. First of all, the Broncos' offensive line looked like complete shit with Jarrett Stidham, and comparatively with we all thought was a top 5 at the worst offensive line in the league with Bo Nix. So that's also something that you probably have to give him a little credit for as well. We'll see if they need to improve their weapons, in my opinion, over there in Denver, and we'll see if that helps. I do think that, as I've talked about in the past, weapons matter. And, just having just guys, eventually it catches up with you, especially when you start playing some of these tougher teams. And, we saw it with the Patriots in the Texans game with CJ, even though CJ Stroud was just playing terribly, they had a bunch of Jags out there with Nico Collins not in the game. So it makes it tough. And, a lot of coaches seem like they feel like they can scheme things open.
Scheme it open.
But there's no substitute for great players. And no matter how much of a guru you are, there's no substitute for great players. So I definitely think that they need to improve there.
Yeah, in that game against the Bills, Bo Nix did play well. I also think, and this will kind of tie into to the little bit of the coaching stuff, but like we saw at the end of that game where the Bills still had a chance to win the game, and they just started pissing down their legs. I mean, that was the aggressive Sean Payton that works, because they literally took three or four straight deep shots and just kept getting the PIs, just kept getting PIs. It's like the defense was just panicking. They back there like the DBs is just like, oh man, I got to grab, and they want to get mad at the refs and jump and Trey White, buddy, time to go.
I get it. I mean, I get it from Trey White because I think they, once again, I kept saying like the team takes the, team takes the personality of the coach, and Sean McDermott seems to get tight in those situations, and I think that we kind of the Trey White thing. Somebody said it. It was like that's the perfect time to really, get at a ref.
I mean, at that point, yeah, because you ain't gonna lose.
If you get a flag, it only moves the ball up 1 yard. Whatever, the game's already over, basically. But I do think that was kind of like a, I would say a picture tells 1,000 words, or whatever the phrase is. But I think that was like a symbolic of all the frustration of we're so close, but there's something like blocking us from getting there. And even though and we can go ahead and segue this into the coaching ranks. Obviously, we talked about it a little bit. Sean McDermott was fired from the Buffalo Bills, and since then they have also promoted Joe Brady to be the head coach. Even though the press conference, in my opinion, was a bit of a disaster, I do think that the Pagula was. I think he was onto something in terms of, look, this team has hit the proverbial playoff wall. And I think that Trey White moment was kind of like the epitome of that in whatever 10-second shot that we got of it. But yeah, obviously, we can kind of go through the coaching ranks right now. We've got, 9-10 openings. The Browns have hired Todd Monken. The Bills promoted and hired Joe Brady, and they also promoted Brandon Beane as well. Monken was announced today. The Steelers, obviously they let go, or Mike Tomlin walked away, and never mind. Mike Tomlin walked away, and Mike McCarthy has taken over there as the head coach. The Ravens, obviously John Harbaugh has moved on to greener pastures, maybe with the New York Giants, and the Ravens have hired Jesse Minter to replace him. The Falcons obviously hired Kevin Stefanski, and they just had their press conference yesterday. Dolphins hiring Jeff Hafley and Eric Sullivan for the GM, and then the Titans obviously bringing in Robert Saleh, leaving the Cardinals and the Raiders with the last two openings. And there's a lot of offensive coordinator openings as well. It's probably a little too much to get into just because
at this point,
there's so much going on right now.
Over half the league.
Over half the league, obviously, with, and some of the final few teams also firing their offensive coordinators, as we mentioned with the Broncos. Bills obviously promoted one, so they don't have one currently.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the ones that have been announced so far, what are you guys' thoughts on some of the coaching hirings, whether good or bad?
I feel like for the Bills, I feel like that was really the only direction they could really go in. Cause like you mentioned earlier, Shad, like a lot of these teams that needed head coaches kind of should have got rid of their GMs at the same time. And so with that being said, like you're up under the Bills GM. I mean, you got new coaches that's going to want, a little more control, a little more player control as far as who they bringing in and whatnot. And so that's a duty that most GMs not going to want to relinquish. So in that juncture, it makes the most sense. Plus, when the time period from when Brian Daboll stopped becoming the offense coordinator to before they got Joe Brady, it was a little bad for Josh Allen. So and then once Joe Brady came in and became offense coordinator, it got back right for him. So I think that was just the perfect for him in general. Like you wouldn't want to bring a whole new regime and then trying to rebuild or whatever mind that the new head coach might have wanted. So I think that was a perfect, just go ahead and let Joe Brady become the head coach and go on from there. But I guess one of the most interesting one to me is Tennessee. With Robert Saleh becoming the head coach there. I want to say it could have a variable effect just because of his defensive mentality, but I just don't think that team is good enough at this right now. So I don't know what direction they're going, but I think with them just drafting a new quarterback, that's going to give him some time to make up or whatever. So he got a longer leash than some people might have, but I think that'll be eventually will work out for them in the same capacity as a variable hire.
Yeah, I went on the Buffalo. I think the timing of it too, just overall, with it happening after the divisional round, and pretty much everything's a lot of things were set, if not already hired by the time they let Sean McDermott go and really jumped into that interviewing cycle. So I mean, so you're looking at the pool of who you got at that point, and it's not really like super inspiring candidates, if we're being honest about it. So I think just to keep that continuity, and it also kind of falls in line with what the owner, like you said, was saying, like they should have won that game. So it's not like he wants to just tear it, like just start all over fresh. Mm-hmm. They should have won that game. We'll see what they do at defensive coordinator. That'll be a big hire. Joe Brady's most important hire is finding that defensive coordinator. But honestly, we'll see. Also have to see what Brandon Beane does, in free agency in the draft to kind of build that defense up and get weapons on the outside on offense. So there's a lot that Buffalo still has to do, but I don't hate that hire at all. Like, I think Joe Brady of course, we saw him getting interviews. He's been getting interviews the past couple cycles. So we'll see if he's ready for it. I mean, I don't think it'll be bad, but you look at you look at Cleveland and kind of what all they got going on, man. And it seems like people are canceling on them. We don't know the inside story of what all is going on, but people are canceling their interviews with them, but still looking at other interviews, whether it be the Raiders, whether it was the Bills. Like, so it's like you look at it from the outside, it's like, what is going on here in Cleveland? Where they can't even get an interview or a second interview or whatever. And then they go out and get Todd Monken. A lot of the reporting, and this is the thing about these reportings, like it's so messy right now, and it's a lot going on. It's so much going on. It's really nasty. Just last week, they brought up Monken as a possibility, which is why, it was a hold on John Harbaugh and not bringing him in right away because Monken was still getting their interviews. So they brought up Monken being a possibility for Cleveland, and they're saying that, okay, well, if Monken's there, they think that Monken and Schwartz would be a good pairing. But then it comes out today that after they actually hired him, Schwartz is like, nah, man. like, nah, this is crazy. Like, I'm not sticking around here if y'all just keep passing me over for Todd Monken or, the young guys they were looking at. So Cleveland has, there are fans that kind of pissed. We'll see how it all ends up.
They said Jim Schwartz was hugging people out the building. Like,
yeah, he said, I'm out. Now, it could just be a money play. But it does seem a little aggressive for a money play. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll kind of see what happens if he ends up staying and getting a raise, which probably what will happen. But that's been interesting, man. I mean, just looking around, like, I don't have too much to say about Miami, to be honest with you. A lot of that is like, we'll see. Jeff Hafley, of course, had the previous head coaching experience in college. He's inheriting a team, and he kept on Bobby Slowick. He's not an offensive coordinator there, which is cool. So you got some continuity since Bobby was there last year as a whatever he was, senior
pass game coordinator.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, pass game coordinator. So I don't really have too much to say about Miami. New York with John Harbaugh, we'll see how he feels about the rest of his staff because a lot of people were expecting Todd Monken to be his OC, but now, who are you gonna get?
Great.
Mike McCarthy thing is another thing, but I think I want to point out the Washington Commanders and the New York Jets, and these are two teams that chose to keep their head coaches and basically fire the rest of their staffs. And we saw today that Tanner Engstrand got canned after a couple of weeks of going back and forth about what his role will be on the offense. So we'll see who they bring in. They talking about your boy Frank, your boy Frank. So that's just a bad look if you're Aaron Glenn and New York Jets. It just seems like it's heading towards more mediocrity. It doesn't seem like there's a clear vision there right now, and that's honestly sad because last season that was the reason why you brought a guy like Aaron Glenn in to have to set a clear vision moving forward. So it's looking ugly there. I watched the Commanders. You promote and then hire two new, just brand new coordinators. I hope it's the right choice, Dan Quinn. I really do, because you are starting off the next year on the hot seat, and it could end up bad. It really could. So those are the two like that still have their head coaches, but it's like, yeah, those are hot spots right now for sure for me.
Yeah, and I think that with the Cleveland thing, I do think that those candidates they PR told everybody that they canceled, but they knew they weren't getting the job. They were told they weren't getting the job. I think that's ultimately
we don't know.
what ended up
Yeah.
happening. But I do think that a lot of people have been, there's a lot of noise coming out of Cleveland, and we obviously don't know where all the noise is coming from. Some people thought it was going to be, I don't want to butcher his last name, but Nate from the Rams was going to be the offense or be the head coach.
Oh,
and then obviously, and then Todd Monken came out of kind of nowhere, but he does have history with the Browns. Obviously, I do think that he has a resume of a guy that should have been a head coach before. Most people, especially considering the last two seasons that he's kind of had, well, this season maybe not so much, but his time with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, I mean, when they were rolling, they were rolling. And then obviously going back to his days at Georgia, right before, obviously wearing the hat, but or shirt too, but his days at Georgia, I mean, they were excellent offensively, and they haven't necessarily been the same since. Even if you think back to some of the guys they had there, comparatively to some of the guys they have now, I mean, you look at the receiving group, and that's A.D. Mitchell, Ladd, George Pickens. Like it starts to really, if you really think about it, it's like, okay, like what was he cooking over there? So it's I do think that it's going to go a little better than people think. The Jim Schwartz thing, we'll kind of see how that plays out. But I also think that Jim Schwartz, we saw what his tenure was as a head coach before. So I mean, it is what it is. Especially, it kind of hurts you that Matt Stafford looks the way that he does. And they're made for some very nasty conversations with Matt Stafford and where his place was in league ranks. But he kind of had to, figure that out and, suck that up, pause. But, maybe if he does end up getting let go from his contract, I mean, I think Buffalo would be a great place for him to go if Jim Leonard doesn't end up going there. Sounds like the Chargers are trying to snipe Jim Leonard over there and bring him to LA. But, aside from that, I'm more curious about some of the hires than I am like intrigued, I guess. Like, or maybe I say I'm intrigued a little bit, but like, for example, like the Mike McCarthy thing, I think a lot of people have kind of given their more people, and maybe that's a little bit because of how a lot of the stuff that came out when he left Green Bay. Like, what's wrong with winning 12 games a year? Like, what's wrong with winning 10 games a year? Obviously, they have to, it sucks that you're kind of hoping that people are hoping that they crater so that they can go ahead and get a quarterback. But, quarterbacks can be found in different ways. Like, I mean, you don't want to go back to I know people don't like to go back to the older quarterbacks, the retreads and stuff like that. But who's to say Geno Smith can't come over there and be really good in Pittsburgh, especially considering some of the best quarterbacks that we've been talking about this year. Sam Darnold is a guy that's bounced around. Obviously, we just talked about him. Baker before his end of season injury or whatever the hell he had going on. He was playing really well. Geno Smith prior to this year was another guy. So Daniel Jones. So there's a lot of people that, quarterbacks that have kind of gotten written off. I know I talked about Will Levis a couple weeks back. Who's to say that maybe he can't be something? Or, obviously Anthony Richardson, there's going to be a lot of talk about him this offseason. There's going to be talk about maybe Kirk Cousins. So like, there's I don't think it's as dire as people think. But going back to Buffalo and and the Ravens, Buffalo, I'm a little I'm a little curious why they didn't take a little bit more time. I understand that Joe Brady was a hot commodity and maybe that he might have looked to go elsewhere, but it's also Josh Allen, and he can kind of pick and choose. If he was that kind of hot commodity. Maybe doing a little bit more of an extensive search, I think would have been a little better, but that was my initial thought when I saw the Joe Brady thing, and then immediately after they floated that Jim Leonard was going to go there, and I was like, okay, I'm sold.
Yeah.
And now with the Chargers, since it's not a guarantee, I'm back to all right. Why wasn't the search a little bit more extensive? So I'm really interested to see how that works out. And you mentioned that the defensive coordinator is going to be his first major hire, and I agree. But I'm interested to see what they do in terms of offensive coordinator, to see, are they bringing in new ideas, and then ultimately, like, back to the Brandon Beane thing, they have to improve the team and the talent on the team. Like, I know that he thinks that, for them to come out and kind of shit on Keon Coleman like they did, you have to think that he's not going to be back. And, so now you have to really put resources into receivers. And, Khalil Shakir is good. Josh Palmer, I think, is solid, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and he wasn't able to break out with Josh Allen nor Justin Herbert for real. So, like, you have to put some real resources in trying to find, talent on the receiver in the receiver room. And so I'm really curious about that. The Titans one probably, honestly, might be my favorite, and that's in part because they got Brian Daboll as well. But I do, once again, I'm wondering why Robert Saleh, kind of put himself in another position where he didn't get to have his GM, pick his GM. There was already one entrenched. He didn't, he's going to what's seemingly been a dysfunctional organization over the last few years, considering where he came from. I thought he might take a little bit more time there, but I do like Cam Ward a lot. It looks to if everything kind of holds suit from like what this season looked like, it's going to be a tougher division. We'll obviously see what the Achilles looks like with Daniel Jones, but you at least have two other teams in the division, in the Jacksonville and the Texans, that should be formidable, regardless of what CJ or Trevor does, really, because they were obviously both teams that won without the quarterback play. Obviously, Trevor got better throughout the season, but he wasn't that good at the beginning of the season. And then the Falcons, I really like. Well, I liked Kevin Stefanski. I like Kevin Stefanski. Not say liked. I like Kevin Stefanski. I'm very curious as to why he's going the route of it basically was all Cleveland, not me. And to me, that's kind of why I was like, maybe you should take a year off. Same thing with John Harbaugh, kind of bringing all, and I'll put John Harbaugh and Kevin Stefanski together on this one. It's, bring in the advisor to the head coach from the Browns, bring in Tommy Rees, which, Tommy Rees has had success elsewhere outside of the Browns. But basically, he's putting all his eggs in the basket of Cleveland was this dysfunctional organization, and John Harbaugh is kind of doing the same thing, where he's kind of putting, which is very curious there to do that about Baltimore.
Yeah.
But both teams are, both New York and the Falcons in total can't like talk down to Cleveland. Like, Cleveland has more playoff wins than they have in the past few years, and obviously that's with Kevin Stefanski being there. But that's still an organizational thing, in my opinion. So I'm very curious why he didn't maybe take time to like, and maybe he'll be 100% correct, but both of them, especially with John, now I guess John Harbaugh is kind of being forced to, with Todd Monken going to Cleveland. He's kind of being forced to, unless he does bring in Greg. Unless he does bring in Greg. He's kind of it. Yeah, if he does that, I'm 100% out.
I'm out.
But I do find it curious, like I said, that both of them are kind of going the route of it wasn't me, it was everybody else around me. And that to me is a bit curious because, John Harbaugh, you had Lamar Jackson, like point blank period. You had Lamar Jackson, you had Derrick Henry, you had an organization that has been, routinely pretty good outside of the fact that they cannot find a receiver to save their life. Rashad Bateman is probably going to be somebody that's out of there as well. But, Zay Flowers is obviously a good player. But, yeah, definitely lost his mind. But, and then Stefanski kind of also it's a little curious he's kind of pulling the like I didn't have control over the quarterback situation, which is like, well, you were brought there for Baker, and Baker obviously had his comments, but that to me is that's more of a story than people I guess want to talk about. But obviously, maybe there is a lot of dysfunction in Cleveland. They haven't been a great team, but at the same time, if you aren't trusted to, he's trying to say that Deshaun Watson wasn't his decision. Baker, they floated right after the Baker comments that them moving off of Baker wasn't his decision. Now, and then they also floated in this season. We know about the Dylan Gabriel Door. I don't know if y'all saw that nigga.
Yeah, they called him Door.
They called him Door. But the Shador thing that, there's still a lot of questions on who wanted who.
Yeah.
And it flip-flopped throughout the season. So all of that, that's why I'm a little bit more. And then, as you mentioned with the Dolphins and Jeff Hafley, he kind of got the pass, in my opinion, just for the first season, because we don't know what the hell is going to go on with Tua. So, look, I feel like it's going to be very difficult to kind of judge that whole situation until we kind of see things play out with the Tua situation. But
that's what I was trying to get at earlier.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about Miami. I don't know.
Maybe the defense will be really good. I don't know. The defense started playing better towards the end of the season. They obviously have players in the running back room and with Achane, and they obviously have Waddle. We'll see what they do with Tyreek Hill as well. I mean, we know Tyreek is gone, but we'll see where he ends up. He seems like a prime candidate for the Ravens. It seems like they always go for these 30-plus-year-old
32-year-old and over.
So a lot of the coaching hires, like I said, I probably come away with the Titans one being my favorite. With maybe honestly, I like Todd Monken, so I might say that we'll have to see how the rest of that plays out too. But I feel like I've left all of it very more curious than anything. And it's the Cardinals, we haven't really had any information on that at all. It seems like Clint Kubiak is going to be the Raiders head coach, and that's kind of been, what the thought has been for a couple weeks. And I feel like I might come away with the Raiders might have done the best job, just because I feel like they're taking their time with it. Maybe just because they're forced to, because Clint Kubiak is still playing. But I'm just real curious. I just feel like I feel like all the coaching hires have been very quick as well. With Buffalo one being the one that I'm mostly like, why don't you just take a little bit more time there?
Yeah, so, like the Kevin Stefanski one was, I was not expecting that shit to happen that Saturday night.
As fast as it was,
I was like, what? Like, and then of course the reporting is, oh, we're not letting them leave. Same thing with John Harbaugh. Oh, don't let them leave. Same thing with Robert Saleh had that. Don't let them leave. That type of stuff. And it's like, why are we in that kind of like? Why is that?
Let that man go.
I don't understand why it's such a premium on that now. All of a sudden, now, like you said, the Raiders, they're taking their time. They're doing the same thing that we saw from the Saints last year, where it was real quiet. And they did a couple of interviews here and there, but they were just waiting. And then they ended up getting Kellen after y'all were done, Chris. So it is interesting to see like how the Cardinal situation will shake out, because that does seem like the one spot where it's like, okay, they've been talking to Mike LaFleur, a person they apparently were talking to. Anthony Campanelli from the Jaguars just signed an extension there, or got a raise, or however you want to say it. And then Raheem Morris was the one of the finalists that they've talked about. But it's like, I don't know what's going on in Arizona right now. But they also have a situation kind of like with Miami, where you got to figure out what to do with Kyler, and that's not easy. It's not going to be easy at all. We'll see what happens with the Cardinals, but they have.
I feel like Kyler hasn't been talked about enough, really. He's kind of fallen to the wayside in a sense where
under the radar.
We'll kind of see. I just with the quarterbacks, I'm wondering, like, are these guys going to end up on the open market more than they end up in trade talks? Like, are people just going to cut their losses?
I could see Kyler, Tua, Geno, like you said. Like, these guys are probably, like, I could see them all getting cut and just swapping around, and that's what you do this season.
I mean, because why wait for a trade? Everybody know you don't want them, so they're not going to give you much for them. And it's like, well, you might as well cut them. So I could see that happening too. I mean,
hey, Indy, make sure you vet all your options. Like, I love you, Dan. I love Daniel Jones, right? I mean, but vet all your options here.
Honestly,
this is a guy coming off an Achilles tear.
If Geno gets cut, I would not mind having Geno take a little flyer in Atlanta. We'll see what happens with Mike, but I think they're going to cut Kirk. Kirk is another one that's probably going to get cut. We'll see if he resigns back or whatever. But I would not mind Geno just to see. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's worth a shot. Just given how his play has been in the past. But once again, I ultimately, like I said from the start, my biggest takeaway is all these openings, all these teams in the league. Look at how the last couple. I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are one thing, but the Eagles had a great team. They were the clear best team in the league. The Seahawks, I feel like, have been the clear best team in the league, and they are obviously the heavy favorites right now for the Super Bowl. We'll see who ends up winning. But even the Patriots, they might not have had full talent, but they have a lot of top talent at specific positions. Cornerback, that was one that we were all raving about coming into the season. I was a big one. Like, I thought maybe Travis Hunter might go there. We'll see. But if they trade up or whatnot, but it build a great team, and from there, allow your quarterback. I think Mike McDaniel. I really like Mike McDaniel. Y'all know that. I think he had a really good little excerpt in his press conference where he talks about, look, Justin Herbert is special. There is things that he can do,
bro.
And it was great. Like, if you had any doubts about Mike McDaniel, I felt like that was
it's
like
perfect. That's the reason why
the
shit was 45 minutes or whatever it was for an offensive coordinator.
Bro, that one excerpt sold me.
And he was basically like, Justin Herbert is special and he can make special plays, but you need to be able to create an offense where all three quarterbacks on your team can achieve that offense, and he has a lot of easy buttons. We don't need to require him to be special all the time, and sometimes coaches fall in love with that. And I just thought that was such a perfect explanation for a lot of what we're seeing. We see that with Kansas City in terms of how they've kind of, the talent that they've taken away from Kansas City and not necessarily replenished with it. Same thing with Buffalo and Josh Allen. Same thing with, Lamar. I know a lot of people, when I say, I want these guys to get receivers and stuff like that, is because of that. Because I do think that that matters. Like, Joe Burrow didn't look as good as he was really good his rookie season, but he took off when Jamar Chase got there. That matters. Like the Jalen Hurts, same thing. Like he was okay. There was a lot of people that didn't think that Jalen Hurts was going to be the guy. Then AJ Brown gets there, and it's like, oh, this is Super Bowl. This is a Super Bowl team. So like that matters. And maybe you don't have to get a Jamar Chase or or an AJ Brown, but same thing with the Rams. I mean, the Rams, I think, were a team that were kind of rebuilding. You get Puka, and now all of a sudden you come bringing Devontae Adams, and that offense like that. Even though I was a guy that thought they were going to be bad this season, that offense took off, and it matters. So weapons matter, and I think teams matter. So to me, I think a lot of teams need to kind of do some soul searching in terms of building full, complete teams, as opposed to having, getting these guys that you think are superstars or aliens, superheroes, whatever the dumbass comments that they like to say about these quarterbacks, and asking them to do everything. So it'll be interesting to see what these teams do in the offseason. Is going to be very interesting. I think there's a lot of people that had a lot of questions. And because of social media, I feel like a lot of people have gotten propped up. Obviously, the C.J. Strouds, people are going to talk about Justin Herbert and his playoff performances. Which, once again, Justin Herbert was good his first playoff game. I understand that they got walked down, but let's stop doing this where he was awful. He was awful those last two, but he was good his first playoff game. But there's going to be talks about that. Somebody that's going to skate, that has been kind of skating under the radar, Jared Verse, on the defensive end. On the defensive side.
Yes.
The guy that everybody thought was going to be somebody and, didn't necessarily make a lot of noise. Caleb Williams is going to be somebody that's talked about. So there's going to be, because of how social media props these guys up, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have some eyes on them moving into the offseason. And I think that gives us a great segue into getting to our hot seat watch of the week. So who you guys got this week and why?
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, I guess, I had obviously Green Bay on the hot seat, but this week I gotta hit home, man. I gotta hit home. I got the Eagles on the hot seat, It's not really necessarily the fact that we don't have an offensive coordinator. I'm not worried about that. I like what you said, Shai, when you take your time and trying to figure it out. But they have created a toxic environment where they think that, it's them or nothing. And that is one of the main reasons why I feel like a lot of the offense coordinators, don't, pull it out. Obviously, they say that, they got other opportunities, but a lot of them, I mean, it's a pressure cooker, man. It's literally a pressure cooker, and it's been built by them, by the organization, and by the fan base. Because the story out of Philadelphia is Kellen Moore. The only reason why he went and took the job is because he didn't like the pressure. It had nothing to do with like the players or whatnot. But when you the offensive coordinator of an offense that has all this talent and you don't, so quote unquote, produce, then next you know you getting your house egg and whatnot. Because and the problem I have with that is, again, I had issues with Kevin Patullo on certain things he was doing, but he's a first time play caller. He is a first time play caller, and for you to just get rid of him after winning the division and getting back to playoffs, winning the division that haven't been won back to back since 2004. You ready to get rid of him just because of what the fan base saying, getting mad about, whatever the case may be? Like, it's hard to win a Super Bowl. Like, for you to think that you was gonna win it back to back, I mean, that's arrogance in my opinion.
Especially with no clear plan of replacing him.
Thank you.
As we've seen.
And for you to constantly watch these games and see that your offensive line has been failing this entire year, not playing up to what we used to for the past few years. They're good, but they're not as excellent as they have been. And so that was a downpour in the run game. That is not his fault. And for you to just scratch it out, and it's like, okay, what will promote somebody to want to go there? Either you're going to get fired the next year or promoted. That is a hell of a fucking business deal. Either you're going to get fired for winning the division and going to the playoffs, or you're going to get promoted because you took them to the Super Bowl. That's an environment that you created, and that shit tough, and that's why they on the hot seat, because you gotta nail it. Now you just put yourself in a box. You gotta fucking nail it. That's it. It ain't no more excuses. You gotta nail it, because you just said this guy wasn't good enough and he took us to the playoffs. So that's my gripe. Again, and that's on the Eagle fans too, because what the fuck you egging people's house for? Like, what the fuck's wrong with y'all? they just be talking fucking nut, and it irritates me, because it's like they don't know coaches. They just be like, they see one person up under a tree and just be like, oh my god, I want that person for that tree, this, that, and third. Don't know nothing about them, because you ain't never seen them do anything. They a quarterback coach for another team. You don't know what the fuck that man do. What are you talking about? But again, that's the toxic of the fans, and it fucked up my organization. So them boys on the hot seat, man. It is what it is at this point. So that's my spiel.
That's real. I get that. I'm gonna say my hot seat, but I just got the notification of who the Jets interviewed for their offense coordinator position, and Greg Roman is a part of that, along with Frank Reich, Darrell Bevel, which
Greg. Yeah,
we'll see what happens with I'm telling you, like I said earlier, the Jets, Aaron Glenn, Dan Quinn, y'all are both on it. But I'm gonna go with Tom Brady. And like we talked about, the Raiders it seems like they're in a position where they're gonna wait it out, see what happens with Seattle, and end up hiring Clint Kubiak. They also had the first overall, pick in the draft, which is widely known to be Fernando Mendoza, and they'll get their franchise quarterback there, sure. But Brady, you got to get this right too. If Clint's not the guy, which we hope he is, he seems like a good, offensive mind. Is he a good head coach? Especially for this team that has a lot of needs and a lot that has to go right. But they do have some weapons. We know we had Brock Bowers. We'll see what happens with Ashton Genty, and if he can, be who they thought the 6th overall pick can be. But this hire has to be right, Tom Brady, because this last one was bad, and we know that we don't know how. Again, we don't know the insides of everything, but the reports are that you were really going hard for Ben Johnson, and you kind of settled on Pete Carroll for stability and stuff like that. You got to get this one right, Tom Brady, or people are going to be looking at you sideways as the new minority owner. You're not even majority, you're my own, but you chose to have your name out there at the forefront of this. You're the one at the national championship game on the sidelines, along with the owner, Mark. You're the one out there like putting your face out there. So Tom Brady, people are going to come at you, and that's what you signed up for. But at the same time, you have to make the right decisions going forward for your franchise. You can't keep bottom feeding and sitting there telling us on Fox, keep calling these games and talking about all the talent in the league, and you can't seem to find talent for your own team. It's a little backwards. It looks a little weird. All right, so we'll see what happens with this offseason going forward. But the Raiders have important decisions to make that already seem like the decisions have been made for them. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I'll just say it like that. Like when you're forced to pick Fernando Mendoza because you had that first pick, because everybody's expecting you to, that can be rough sometimes. So we'll see, how it ends up for everybody, especially the rest of their draft and all that. But again, they have decisions to make with Geno, and they got decisions to make, throughout the roster with Max Crosby, all of that. So we'll kind of see what they do going forward. But Tom Brady, you're in the hot seat.
With that being said, first and foremost, shout out Indiana for winning their first national championship. Shout out for Fernando Mendoza, because
hell of a season.
He was excellent, especially in that game, in that championship game. And I do think that he really played himself. If there were any questions about it, I think he really played himself into that number one overall. Now I'm blanking on who I had last time. It might have been C.J. Stroud, but if it wasn't, he needed to be on it. But with that being said, this is not who is my hot seat, but everybody, we need to go ahead and acknowledge it. Everybody that's on the Pro Football Hall of Fame voting committee that did not vote for Bill Belichick to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, regardless of reasons. I know people try to say, you thought he would get in, so you voted for somebody else. No, you all deserve to have your. If you did not vote him to be a Pro Football Hall of Famer this season, you deserve to be outed, and you deserve to have your vote removed. And moving forward, that needs to be like, there are some things. I understand that people have, there's some people on Twitter that's like, the voting is petty. They hold grudges. If that's the case, you need to be removed, and we need to stop this, because that is the greatest.
Them names so quick,
that's the greatest head coach in NFL history. There's no question about it. There needs to. I understand what it is, but this is also, we're talking about history. We're talking about NFL royalty, and that's not right. So first and foremost, need to go ahead and acknowledge that. But I'm going a little different.
Wright for that.
I blame Kraft, really. But
Nick Wright came out with this crazy. I don't know if y'all watched it back a few weeks ago.
The Patriots all getting in at one time, which is cool. But I'm pretty sure in that same thing he also said, like, go ahead and vote Bill in, but like let him know we're just gonna hold your induction until next season, and then we'll bring somebody else in to replace, which is fine. I was cool. I would have been cool with that, but. I do remember that, and that I think that would have been a special weekend. I do think that would have been a special weekend for sure.
I mean, and it's set up that way now. So
yeah, I mean, truly, and if the Patriots win, the Super Bowl, that would be even really good. But with that being said, I'm going a little different here, and so I'm going with two guys, both guys that have kind of been billed as mercenaries or tried to build themselves as mercenaries, bouncing to team to try to get them to a championship. So for my first guy, I got Davante Adams. So Davante Adams obviously had a touchdown in this past conference championship game. Now 0-5 in conference championship games with haven't been able to have that appearance in the Super Bowl. There was conversations. I don't know why. Well, I don't want to reveal my next one, so I'm gonna get into the comparison here in just a second. But 780 yards this past season, 14 touchdowns. Obviously, the yardage has gone down over the last couple years. You went to the Raiders thinking that you were going to be the difference. There was going to be this supercharged division, and that wasn't the case. Went to the Jets to go with Aaron, and it immediately went downhill. Basically, the moment that you came over there, had a really good season. Obviously, with the 14 touchdowns, I think led the league in touchdowns this season. But, with the team or with Matthew Stafford getting older, he's obviously getting older. Another tough loss. We'll kind of have to see, what next year looks like for him. I think you should stick it out in LA. Like, don't try to go to bounce another team and I'm going to be the difference. I think you need to stick it. I think he needs to stick it out there and kind of figure it out. And hopefully they'll have an opportunity to make it back next season. Obviously they're probably going to have to pick up another receiver, considering that their receiver 3 was inactive like half the time. So, but Devontae Adams, you're on my hot seat for that because obviously, you did perform, but we would love to see you get an opportunity to actually compete in a championship like Stephon Diggs, another guy that, that's kind of been an all-pro, that's kind of had that's built himself as a mercenary going to the Texans and thinking that he was going to be the difference. And, obviously had a tough season last season with the injury, but going over to the Patriots and becoming a leader there and kind of being a big piece. So for my other guy,
I thought it would be Stephon Diggs.
No, it's not Stephon Diggs, but he does kind of fit. He does kind of fit there.
Okay, Stephon.
So for my other guy, I'm going with because we're getting to this point of the year. I'm going with another K. Adams favorite and Kevin Durant.
Oh, okay.
Kevin Durant here. You build yourself as a mercenary. Obviously, since you left the Thunder, going to the Warriors. Becoming a 2-time champion, 2-time Finals MVP. But obviously, a lot of people have given credit to the Warriors and the Warriors organization more than they've given you credit. Which whether fair or unfair, the sentiment was we want to see what KD does. All these other places, you went to Brooklyn, obviously got your way, got James Harden over there, got Kyrie over there, and things didn't work out. We're able to facilitate your way over to Phoenix. Had Chris Paul, had Bradley Beal, had Devin Booker over there. Didn't work out. Now you have your way with Houston. And unfortunately, Fred VanVleet goes down at the beginning of the season. We just got the news Steven Adams got hurt. We're currently, middle or in the playoff race in the West. I want to say probably the 4 or 5 seed at this point. Obviously it's always fluctuating. But people are going to start looking at you. At the beginning of the season, it looked like it was going to be Sengun's team and he was going to, take off. But people are going to start looking at you, especially as we get closer and closer to the playoffs, to kind of make some noise. And ultimately, it can't be another first round, second round exit, this season, especially given the talent on that team. Even with the injuries that they have, they still have Reed Shepard in a wedding. They still have Jabari Smith. That's, a great young player that, could probably break out at any point. You still have Amin Thompson, which he's got to improve his game a little bit in terms of the shooting and stuff like that. But defensive demon, for sure, unquestioned. So still got Sengun, still got a really good team, still got obviously a really good head coach. So Kevin Durant, how are you going to show up as we start to, shift more from the NFL as the Super Bowl season, as the Super Bowl comes up next week and we shift over to, basketball and start talking a little bit more about basketball because we really haven't talked about it too much. And obviously for good reason, the season doesn't technically start till after the trade deadline, All-Star break. We know what it is.
We know that.
So we got to see what you're gonna do. And in this season, just like Devontae Adams, are you going to be able to get back to the dance and show who you are? So Kevin Durant, Devontae Adams, K. Adams favorites. You guys are on the hot seat here. Let's see what you guys do.
Hey, Shot, you said another 30-year receiver to the Ravens.
I mean, hey, it might be. It might be Devontae. It might be Devontae Adams. DeAndre Hopkins tried it. Maybe we haven't really talked about DeAndre Hopkins, but what does his future look like? Obviously we haven't really thought about it because DeAndre Hopkins has kind of fell to the wayside in the debacle of the season that the Ravens had, but he did have some really good moments. Obviously he wasn't going to put up the 1,000 yards and stuff like that, but he did have his opportunity to be a mercenary with the Kansas City Chiefs and now with the Ravens. What do you do this season? So you probably throw him in there as well. But Tariq Hill, Devontae Adams, I'm sure you guys will be on the Ravens' radar for whatever reason, as opposed to just getting really a good young receiver. So, like I said, Kevin Durant, Devontae Adams, you guys are on my hot seat. Let's see what you guys do. obviously we don't have picks this week, but last week we can go ahead, or the last 2 weeks we can go ahead and get into our picks, what they were, and kind of where we fall heading into the Super Bowl. So, Cass, let's hear it.
All right. So a couple weeks ago, going back to the divisional round, I had 2 right. Chris, you had 2 right. Shy, you had 3 out of the 4. The only one you got wrong was, of course, Buffalo. But you ended up picking Seattle to win, which happened. New England over Houston, and then the Rams over Chicago. Chris, of course, me and you picked Houston, and then you ended up picking Chicago. I picked San Francisco. That was kind of difference there. So after the divisional round, we were sitting at 61. Me, Chris, you're at 60, and Shy, you're at 59. So conference championship round, because we had our picks texted in the chat, time stamped this time. So Chris, you had the Broncos and the Seahawks. I had the Patriots and the Rams, and Shy, you picked the Broncos and the Rams. So both of your picks ended up, yeah, tough. I had the Patriots as my 1, and Chris, you had the Seahawks as your 1. Going into the empty week, I guess you could say, I'm at 62. Chris, you're at 61. Shy, you're at 59.
Yep, and that it will be an important Super Bowl. Obviously, next week we can kind of get into who the Super Bowl matters for the most. Not in terms of quarterbacks and stuff like that, but obviously every year we kind of talk about there's players like such as DeMarcus Lawrence, and Stephon Diggs, as I mentioned, that guys that have kind of been around for a long time that getting a Super Bowl, DeMarcus Lawrence big time, getting there for the first time. Same thing with Stephon Diggs getting there for the first time. Guys that have maybe not been on the cusp, like for DeMarcus Lawrence's sake, but Stephon Diggs' sake, both with Minnesota and Buffalo. We'll kind of get into some of that next week. But with that being said, that gives us a wrap for another episode of the Speak Up Sports Podcast. We will catch y'all next week during Super Bowl week, and see you then.
Yes, sir.